Nii, mul on suur rõõm juhatada sisse järgmine etteaste siin suurel laval, milleks saab olema järjekordne loeng, aga ma veel enne tõesti meenutan teile kõigile, et praegune jutt tuleb inglise keeles ja kellel on mugavam, et seda loengut tõlgitaks, siis on võimalik sealt eest võtta kõrvaklapid ja kasutada sünkroontõlget loengu ajal. Aga loeng tuleb psühholoogiaprofessor Arne Holtelt Norrast, kuidas töökoht saab edendada vaimset tervist ja ennetada häireid. So, Mr. Holte, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to my beloved city of Tallinn. I love to come here. It's one of the most friendly cities and countries in the world. You're very lucky. You're very lucky. There are few countries, I don't know about anyone, that have both the Minister of Labor and the Minister of Health in the same ministry, in the same person. This is very, very rare, but it's an ideal situation for promoting mental health and making the workplaces more productive. Let me first remind you that the population's mental health is your country's most important resource. Fish doesn't matter. Farming doesn't matter. Technology doesn't matter if you don't have good mental health. The ability to regulate emotions, to think rationally, to cope with social challenges, to coordinate our behavior with each other, that is the main resource of a country. Unfortunately, we do not take very well care of that, which leads to that it's estimated that any given time, 1 in 5 working adults has a mental health problem with a lifetime prevalence rate reaching up to 50%. Now, you see the picture of your Minister of Health or your Minister of Labor, or both, I'm not quite sure, maybe. And the reason why is that this lecture will be a little bit untraditional. The thing is that since he is a very busy person, he has 2 ministries, 2 very different areas, and he also is at the head of his party. He must be extremely busy. So therefore, I have prepared a lecture that he can use. So I have prepared a lecture for him. And yesterday, I visited his office. And we did an exercise on this letter, and I took some photos, as you can see. And he said that 1/4 of all loss of health in Estonia is caused by mental disorders. Here you can see it. This is the 1/4. These are all the illnesses we can have, and you can see that loss of health in Estonia by cause and age. And you see, mental health is the big challenge as compared to any others. Here are coronary heart diseases. Here are cancers. So while we live, loss of health is mainly due to mental disorders. Half of the loss of mental health in Estonia is due to depression. It's depression that is the big bad wolf. More than 1/3 of all loss of mental health among men in Estonia is due to depression. Nearly 2/3 of all loss of mental health among women in Estonia is caused by depression. This only includes loss of health while we are alive. If we also include mortality, what we die from, we get these numbers. 13% of all lost healthy life years in Estonia are caused by mental disorders. And if you look at these lost healthy life years, 28% of all healthy life years among young adults 15 to 49 years of age are caused by mental disorders. And if you look at men, 55% of all lost healthy life years due to mental health, among women are caused by depression. And if we look at men, 61% of all lost healthy life year due to mental health among men in Estonia are caused by drug and alcohol. Big, big, big problem. And it's costly. It's costly. In England, for instance, I don't have number on the costs of mental illness updated in Estonia, but in England, for example, the economic cost of mental illness in this year, financial year, has been estimated to 105 billion pounds. It's extremely expensive for the country not to take care of their mental health. In the United States, estimates for the period 2001 to 2003 indicate that serious mental illness is associated with the annual loss of earnings totaling $193 billion. The economic costs here are partly direct cost, which is healthcare cost, or indirect cost, which is imposed caregivers, family members, and communities, not directly linked to the treatments. If you look at Germany, the overall common mental disorder caused by direct costs are roughly 29 billion euros. But they are 50% higher from the indirect costs. It's the indirect costs that are really the big costs. And if you look at in Australia, previous research has estimated that job strain population attributable risk, that is, how much of the depression can be explained by conditions at the workplace, is due to 13% among men and 17%, nearly 1/5 of the explanation of depression in Australia are due to conditions at the workplace. And it's reason to believe that it's the same fraction in Estonia. Job stressors also predict elevated risk for poor health behaviors as well as various physical illness, including cardiovascular disorders. So it's not only mental health, but we need to take care of our mental health in the workplace. So let's ask, can work make you ill, mentally ill? There is now a very recent study, a meta-review, that is a review that had reviewed all the reviews, showing that analyzed 37 reviews of 230 single studies to determine whether certain kinds of work can increase incidence of mental illness, specifically anxiety and depression, because anxiety and depression are the most expensive, most frequent disorders. They found, Harvey and company, found that 4 groups of workplace risk factors for depressions, anxiety, and stress-related mental health problems. And these are high job demands, low job control, particularly when these two are combined, you will have a risk situation. If you mix this with role stress, ambiguity about roles, conflict between your roles, and of course, bullying and low social support. Undesired, harmful actions persistently committed against the employee for an extended period of time. These 4 groups of risk factors have now been identified through 213 single studies. Let me ask the interpreter, is it okay? Fine. Are you following me? Okay. In conclusion, across a large number of countries, a large amount of studies have demonstrated that stressful working conditions may have detrimental impacts on mental health. Does it matter what you do? What kind of work you do? Are there any relationship between mental health, absenteeism, and presenteeism? Absenteeism is not coming to work. Presenteeism is not producing optimally while you are at work because you're ill, and the nature of the job. Now, there is now also a very, very recent study that are addressing these questions. Using nationally representative panel data in Australia, Boboya and colleagues analyzed relationship between mental health, absenteeism, and presenteeism. They also looked at how these relationships were moderated by the nature of the job itself. And by the nature of the job, they were looking at 4 different factors. One is degree of job control. Do you make decisions concerning your own work? Job security, job stress, and job complexity. They found that job conditions are related both to presenteeism, if you underachieve when you're at work, and to absenteeism, even after accounting for mental health. So there is a direct relationship between these conditions and these 2 factors. Second, they also found that job conditions are relatively more important in understanding diminished productivity at work if workers are in good rather than bad mental health. So it's actually in order to produce positive health that this is important. The effects of job complexity and stress and absenteeism did not depend on workers' mental health, while job security and control moderated the effect of mental illness on absence days. The magic bullet, according to Bayona and their colleagues, seems to lie in the reduction of job stress. That's the big point. Initiatives to limit and help workers manage job stress seems to be the most promising avenue for improving productivity of workers, irrespective of their mental health state and gender. The potential for reducing the tremendous cost of mental illness to firms, employers, and society in general rests in large part of employers developing and employment policies and workplace cultures that support workers when they are mentally ill, not only in attending work, but also in being productive while they are at work. Importantly, Yevgeny Ossinovsky emphasized in this trial lecture he had with me yesterday. Importantly, he said, the nature of the work environment, as reflected in the level of control workers have over their jobs, job security, work stress, and complexity of their job, are relatively more important in understanding diminished productivity at work if workers are in good rather than poor health. It seems that current policies have failed. Public policy often focus on limiting direct health care expenditures, restricting access to disability support, and creating employment incentives as the primary means to contain the escalating costs of mental illness. This seems to be the current policy in many, many countries. Yet most individuals with mental disorders are at work. Most people with mental health issues, they are at work. They're not out of work. Much more of the economic cost of mental illness occurs because workers are simply less productive when they have mental health issues. Common mental health disorders, most notably depression and anxiety, are now recognized as the leading cause of sickness, absence, and long-term work disability in most developed countries. In the United States, for instance, approximately half of the overall cost of depression is attributable to reduced productivity of workers. This is partly due to absenteeism, but even more to presenteeism. In Australia, for instance, the absence rates are approximately 5% higher among workers who report being in poor mental health. Every 7th day of work absenteeism in Germany has a mental reason. Furthermore, the average sick leave duration in Germany of 34 days is much longer for mental than for physical illnesses. the odds that workers in poor mental health report diminished productivity at work is, however, 6 times higher than those of other similar workers in good mental health. So it's the presentism, and it's the presentism because of mental issues, which is one of the big challenges. With more than 40% of all cases, common mental disorders are the main cause of granting disability pensions, and also, in addition, the relevant proportion of annual early retirement has more than doubled over the last 20 years. This is Germany. Still, the interest in medical science has until now mainly focused on how and why certain individuals become diseased, that is, in pathogenesis. Traditionally, this has been done by treating illnesses and by suspicion of causative elements, eliminating or reducing identified risk factors at work. Despite legislation in the field of work environment, both on national and international level, over a century of labor inspections, and the efforts of thousands of occupational health personnel. Still, in Sweden, as in many other countries, but we have numbers from Sweden, from this study, 21% of the Swedish women, 15% of the Swedish men reported in 2007 to have had work-related disorders other than accident during. So it seems simply that this policy has not worked. It seems, as your Minister of Labor said, it's because every time he has a blue tie, he is the Minister of Labor, you know, and when he has a red tie, he's the Minister of Health. Haven't you seen that? Observe him next time. It seems that the national endeavors do not reach all the way. That's an understatement. We have to admit, the Minister of Health said, we had to admit, the current strategy has failed. Instead, there is an urgent need to identify ways that employment policies and employer practices can be redesigned to support inclusion and productivity and reduce presentism. This seems to be the 2 big points when we experience mental illness. Now, I've talked about the risk factors linked to the workplace. However, the workplace is one of the most healthiest places you can go to for the mental health. Recently, at least, Joyce and colleagues, very recent study that too, did the first meta-review of 11 reviews. That a meta-review is when you review other people's reviews, because when you have many reviews of the research, then somebody has to review the reviews, which is kind of including everything we know. So recently, Joyce and colleagues did the first meta-review of 11 reviews of benefits of work for mental health. They conclude that the accumulated quantitative and qualitative evidence demonstrates that having a job is associated with a greater sense of autonomy, improved well-being, reduced depression and anxiety symptoms, increased access to resources to cope with demands, enhanced social status, and unique opportunities for personal development and mental health promotion. The workplace is simply a mental health producing place. This is also consistent with the pioneering study of Waddell and Burton in 2006, which is really the pioneering study here, that there is strong evidence that despite its risks, work itself reduces the risk of depression and improves mental health. So far, a lot of the focus on work and mental health has been on the detrimental effects on work. However, the main picture is the opposite. The main picture is that work is promoting mental health. So what is a healthy work environment? Despite, and this is of course the Minister of Health that talks about the Minister of Health, you can see it on the red tie. Despite an extensive and inclusive research, Lindberg and Wingård found only one study explicitly dealing with indicators of healthy work environment. There's so far only one study. This study suggests that the presence of stress management programs in an organization might serve as an indicator of good place, of a good place to work, as these organizations were more likely to offer programs that encourage employee well-being, safety, and skill development than those without stress management program. So stress management program is just an indicator. It's not the solution, it's an indicator. However, there were several studies that have either investigated employees' views of what constitutes a healthy workplace or guidelines for how to create such a workplace, even though we have few studies that actually directly and explicitly study it. We have a workers' view and we have guidelines. Now, if we include these, we will, whoops. If we include these, the 9 most pronounced factors that emerged from these studies, 23 studies, were in descending order. Collaboration and teamwork, growth and development of the individual, recognition, employee involvement, positive, accessible and fair leader. Actually, this is also extremely important, the leadership. Autonomy and empowerment, appropriate staffing, skilled communication, and safe physical work. These are the 9 most prominent factors if we look at the workers' opinions or experience, or at guidelines, which is the best we have so far. Now, the point I said is to prevent presenteeism, because presenteeism is a much, much bigger challenge than absenteeism, because simply most people, that when we suffer from mental health problems, we tend to be at work. So based on a review of 14 medium to high quality studies, Cachelier and colleagues conclude that there is evidence that workplace health programs may reduce presenteeism. The successful factors are organizational leadership, and I cannot emphasize this too much. Organizational leadership is very, very important. Health risk screening, individually tailored programs, and supportive workplace culture. Whoops, maybe. The potential risk factors I identified were being overweight, poor diet, lack of exercise, high stress factors, poor relations with co-workers and management, which is very much also a leadership challenge. I have a problem with this one. Oh, there. Now, there are several types of interventions for common mental disorders in the workplace. Joyce has recently reviewed 140 reviews of 481 primary research studies, and they found moderate evidence for 2 primary interventions: enhancing employment control and promoting physical activity. This is not a study which is specifically looking at mental health. It's including mental health, but it looks at general health. And I guess this is one of the reasons why physical activity comes up so strongly. There are stronger evidence found for CBT-based, as cognitive behavioral therapy-oriented stress management. Less evidence found for other secondary prevention interventions, such as counseling. And strong evidence was also found against the routine use of debriefing following trauma when there have been accidents or events in a workplace. Overall, these findings demonstrate that there are empirically supported interventions that workplaces can utilize to aid the prevention of common mental illness, as well as facilitating the recovery of employees diagnosed with depression or anxiety. I need my phone to look at the time. Excuse me. put it down here somewhere. It's on Norwegian time, so. Okay. Now, universal prevention is probably the most important. When something is widespread, such as depression and anxiety or general mental health problems, very widespread, then it's the case that these with medium and low risk will produce more cases than this little group with high risk will do. And this is why, in order, when something is widespread, is the most effective way not to go for the high-risk groups, but to go for the whole population, so-called universal prevention, meaning that we are intervening towards the whole population irrespective of risk, simply because these with low or medium or low risk produce more cases than these with high risk. That's Jeffrey Rowe's theory of prevention. And usually such prevention trials have relatively small effect sizes. That is, we are not able to move the population very much, as we are able to sometimes with the small high-risk group. We can have bigger effects. But this curve shows that even with a very small effect in the general population, for instance at a workplace, then we can reduce the prevalence with quite a big degree. A small effect in the general population produces a large effect in the high-risk groups. Here, this is an example of prevalence of depression, which is roughly 8% in our populations. And if we are able to move the population only a little bit here, for those of you who are into statistics, 0.3 standard deviations, then we can actually reduce the prevalence of depression into nearly half by such a procedure. And this is why Tan and colleagues did a meta-analysis of all the randomized controlled trials that used universal trials in workplaces. There are actually only 9 such studies to prevent common mental disorders, particularly depression. And they found positive effects of universal intervention in the workplace in preventing depression. They conclude that there is good quality evidence that universally delivered workplace mental health intervention can prevent increased levels of depression symptoms among workers. Now, we also have some, instead of doing simple interventions at specific workplaces, we also have some structural initiatives that we can take. For instance, Markussen, Mykletun and Rød in Norway provide empirical evidence from Norway showing that for temporary disabled workers on long-term sick leave, activity requirements not only reduced absenteeism and social security benefit claims, but also significantly improve subsequent employment prospects. That is, graded sick leaves. The results indicate that requiring temporary disabled workers on long-term sick leaves to be active and work to the extent deemed tolerable by their physicians is an effective tool to reduce social security dependency and raise subsequent employment. The effects are significant both from an economic and statistical point of view. Their most conservative estimates imply that substituting a graded for a non-graded absence certificate cuts the number of lost working days during the sick leave by more than half and raises their employment propensity 2 years later by 16% points. The key findings from this work is that the use of graded rather than non-graded sickness absence certificates reduces the length and volume of long-term absence spells and significantly improves the likelihood that the absentees are employed in subsequent years. So using graded sick leave, not falling out of work, is much more effective than using full sick leave if you can. The effects are their most conservative estimates indicate that switching from a non-graded to a graded absence certificate before the 8th week of absence reduces the length of the absence spell by more than 90 full-time equivalent days. It also reduces social insurance claims the next 2 years in terms of, for instance, sickness or disability benefits around 80 to 90 days. Even more importantly, it raises employment propensity 2 years after by around 16%, which I mentioned. These findings from Norway thus indicate that the introduction of activation requirements in temporary disability insurance schemes is a promising strategy towards reducing sickness pay costs and combating labor market exclusion. I don't think I have time to go through the individual placement support, but in order to get those people who are never came into work or fell totally out of work because of mental disorder, there is now good evidence, even for severe mental disorders, that this is very effective. We have now tried out in Norway doing this for common mental disorder, and with similar very good results. And I'll send you the PowerPoint afterwards. I can't go through it, but I'll go through some of the economy. Some people would believe that all of this is very costly, and it is. However, if you look at the analysis that came out originally in 2011 from Martin Knapp and David McDade at the London School of Economics, they calculated, do we save more than the costs? Is it cost effective? And they showed in August 2007, they came out again with a new but very conservative analysis of this. And they show that work programs to reduce risk for depression among adults in the workplace, and for every pound they invested in that, they saved £2 in 2 years. 200% interest on your investment, not bad. And if we look at their earlier analysis from 2011, screening at the workplace and early stepwise intervention against depression, for every pound they invested in that, they earned £5. 500% interest, not bad. Workplace program to promote positive mental health among adults. In a very conservative analysis, they show that such programs, for every pound you invest, you earn 2.4 pounds in 1 year only. If you look at their a little bit more liberal analysis, workplace program to promote mental health and well-being at the workplace, that they published in 2011, for every pound you invest here, you earn 10 times as much. Why then is it so important for our mental health to be employed? Actually, yesterday when I visited your Minister of Health and your Minister of Labor, it ended up by I happened to overhear a conversation between them, between your Minister of Health and your Minister of Labor. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of that conversation. I'm not sure that he is very happy that I show this, but I took some picture. I heard your Minister of Labor say, but Yevgeny, why is it so important for us, for our mental health, to be employed? But Yevgeny, your Minister of Health, responded, what is it that makes you into being the person that you are? That gives you a sense of identity and self-respect? And your Minister of Labor answered, my job, of course. I am Minister of Labor and I'm the leader of my party, and that's who I am. And if I ask you who you are, You will respond with your family and friends, but you will very quickly refer to your education or your job. It's a part of our identity. Your work is a part of your identity. Exactly, Evgeny, the Minister of Health said. Your job may not be the only one, but still one of the most important sources for your sense of identity and self-respect. And what gives you a sense of meaning in life, Evgeny? You know, a sense of being part of something bigger than yourself, that there are somebody that needs you. And the Minister of Labor responded, my job, of course. It may not feel like that every day, but I sure am part of something that's greater than myself. The ministry needs me, and the party too, at least for the moment. So, yes, I have to admit that my job fills my life with meaning. And for most of you, your job will actually be a big part of your meaning in life, sense of meaning in life. Exactly, the Minister of Health said. And what gives you a sense of mastery, Evgeny? That there is something that you are good at, that there is something that you manage here in life. And Evgeny, the Minister of Labor, answered, well, I'm still Minister of Labor and Labor. The employment rates are pretty good. And my speech at the last National Convention of the Social Democratic Party was not too bad. So, Evgeny, the Minister of Health, responded, so your answer is your job here too. That is where you find your sense of mastery. That would be the case for most of you also. Not every day maybe, but mainly. Yes, I guess so. Not only at the job, but to a large degree. Now, Evgeny, the Minister of Health, asked, tell me where you belong. I guess that both of you and both you and I in some way belong together with Yuri, the government, and to the party, of course, together with all the other social democrats. We do disagree now and then, but sure, both of us belong to the government and the party. On the job then, the Minister of Health asked. Of course, I belong many other places too, but I definitively belong to my job. And if I ask you where you belong, you would quickly refer to your job. And where do you enjoy your sense of security? That you can think, feel, and unfold without being afraid. I get where you're heading now, Evgeny, the Minister of Labor responded. And I must say that even though it may go hot now and then, I experience a lot of safety on the job, at least until the next election. And your sense of participation then, the Minister of Health asked. The feeling that it means something for others, that what you do or do not do. Are you joking with me? The Minister of Labor said. My job, of course. Is it possible to get a stronger sense of participation than the one I get on the job? And at last, the Minister of Health asked, and at last, Evgeny, where do you find your sense of community? You know, where you can share thoughts and feelings and experiences. Someone who knows you and cares about you, so that you are not all alone. Well, I keep my private arena to myself, he said, but I know that I can always come to you, Evgeny. As Minister of Health, you take care of us all. So, you've got me now. Except from at home, I retrieve much of my sense of community on the job, like the most of you do too. Yes, Evgeny, Minister of Health said, what I have asked you about now are the 7 most important sources of good mental health. The sense of identity and self-respect, meaning in life, mastery, belonging, security, participation, and community. And you have told me that a lot of this you retrieve from your job. Not only from your workplace, I hope, but that your workplace is an important source for your mental health, can there be no doubt about. And then the Minister of Labour answered, yes. Yes, when you say it like that. I have always thought about full employment in the country as economy. After all, I am both an economist and the Minister of Labour. But you're sure right. The workplace is also one of our most important sources of good mental health. Yes, Evgeny, that is the most important reason why we must ensure that everybody has a workplace to go to, that all workplaces are health promoting, that graded sick leave is the main rule, and that assisted employment offered to everyone that has fallen out of work because of mental health issues. Maybe we could call it the 7 sources of maybe we could call these 7 sources of mental health that you asked me about for the 7 mental health rights, Evgeny, the Minister of Labour asked. Oh, yes, but the Minister of Health said, just like Professor Holte has done. Oh, has he? The Minister of Labour responded, yes. If you can read Norwegian, you can look at his webpage, and you can see him presenting there. Oops. But how do we do it? The Minister of Labour said. First, you need to know how it feels when the mental health fails. I know that, the Minister of Labour said, approximately like this. I am nothing worth. All is meaningless. Nobody needs me. I cannot achieve anything. I'm not good at anything. I do not belong anywhere. I do not dare to do anything. I'm always afraid. The world just happens outside me. What I do or do not do don't matter at all. I have nobody to share my thoughts and feelings with. There are nobody who knows me, who cares about me, and whom I know that will look after me when, if needed. I'm really all alone. And this is how it feels, independent of diagnosis. And all of you have sensed some of this. I have also. It's simply a part of being a human being. It's when this takes fully over that it becomes a mental disorder. And then the Minister of Health said, then you need to know how it feels when your mental health works. I'm finished in 2 minutes. I know that too. It feels approximately like this. I know approximately who I am. I'm not fantastic, but I'm good enough. Fortunately, there are somebody who needs me. And there is at least something that I'm good at. I know to whom and where I belong. I can feel and unfold myself without being afraid. It means something to others what I do or do not do. I have someone to share my thoughts and feelings and experiences with. Fortunately, there are somebody who knows me, who cares about me, whom I trust that will look after me when I need it. I'm not all alone. Then the Minister of Health said, then you need to put some psychological concepts on it. Oh, then you get the 7 mental health rights that Professor Holte has formulated. They go like this. Yes. Everybody has a right to a sense of identity and self-respect, that they are something, that they are something worth. Everybody has a right to a sense of meaning in life, that they are part of something bigger than themselves, that there are somebody that needs them. Everybody has a right to a sense of mastery, that they're good at something, whatever it is, that there's something they can manage. Everybody has a right to a sense of belonging, that they belong somewhere, that they belong to somebody. Everybody has a right to a sense of security. Sorry, this has come to partly in Norwegian. Sense of security, that they can feel, think, and unfold themselves without being afraid. And everybody has a sense, a right to a sense of participation, that it actually matters to somebody what you do or do not do. And finally, everybody has a right to a sense of community, that you have something to share your experiences, your feelings and thoughts with. That there is somebody that knows you, that you know take care of you, that you're not totally alone. If we deliver on this in the workplace, we'll get a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. And this is a WHO definition of mental health. And then the Minister of Labour said, "Thank you, Yevgeny. This is what we should measure our workplaces on." Yes, the Minister of Health said, "Yes, Yevgeny, if they deliver on this, then they are mentally health promoting workplaces." And if they don't, the Minister of Labour said, and if they don't, then they are not mental health promoting workplaces. That's how easy it is, Yevgeny said. That's how difficult it is, Yevgeny said. "Thank you for listening, Yevgeny," Yevgeny said. And then the Prime Minister came and said, "Thank you for presenting, Yevgeny and Yevgeny. Let us now go out and make all the workplaces in Estonia into mental health promoting workplaces." And then somebody were listening and said, "Have you heard what they plan to do in the workplaces in Estonia? And they are going to make all the mental health, all the workplaces mentally health promoting." And then the Prime Minister, the Minister of Health and the Minister of Labour, now with the red tide, said, "Thank you for listening, Estonian mental health fair." And I say, thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm now just gonna ask whether there is any questions. Nii et kui on nüüd teil repliike või küsimusi, siis te võite need esitada, võite täiesti vabalt seda teha eesti keeles ja professor Holtele siis tõlgitakse see küsimus. Kas annate märku? Kas see tähendab, et kellelgi ei ole midagi? Ahaa, siin on üks käsi püsti, nii et palun.
Kas nende...
Üks moment. Kuidas see on? Kas see tõlge praegu... Okei, jah, siis palun.
Kas nende 7 asja jaoks on olemas ka mingi skaala või küsimustik?
These 7 things, is there any scale available or something for measuring these 7?
On these 7, unfortunately, we are not finished doing it, but we are working on it. It's a synthesis of a lot of the literature into these 7 and trying to simplify it down to that. And we're working on developing a scale, but there's no scale yet, unfortunately.
Nii, kas veel mõni mõte või repliik? Olge julged.
Siin tuli ka välja see, et teie ettekandest, et töö ja identiteet, ehk siis töö justkui ei peaks ja ei saaks olla identiteedi põhiosa. Inimesed, kes on enam 20 või 30 aastat ainult tööle, kus nad siis peaksid alustama?
You said that work is a part of identity, but it shouldn't be the most important part of identity. But people who have lived 20, 30 years knowing that work is the most important thing and they want to change it, where they should start?
Difficult question. But I think you are right. Early in life, work is a less important part of your identity, but by increasing age, work becomes a more and more important part of your identity. And this is the case, it seems, whether it's you have high education or low education. Workplaces create meaning in life for people and also a sense of identity. But if you think it becomes too much sense of your identity, I think you should start doing something else.
That was your answer, jah?
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
that was my answer.
Nii, kas on veel mõtteid või repliike? Te võite lihtsalt ka öelda mõne repliigi, see ei pea tingimata olema küsimus. Aga andke käega märku. Seal ma näen, on midagi teoksil.
Jah, osaliselt vastus teie küsimusele, et Mart Jürisoo raamatus ja tema töögrupp on töötanud päris palju profiile välja, millega mõõta individuaalselt organisatsiooni stressiseisundit näiteks ja siis diagnoosida nii-öelda seda, kui palju on läbipõlemise juures või need faktorid.
Estonian language, there are some scales available. Like
Yeah. We also have in different studies, we have certain items that are used, but not as not specifically those 7 in one scale that has been validated and psychometrically tested and so on. But single questions are used in many different studies, and this is among the things we have been looking at. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nõnda, ja veel üks võimalus. Ja seal on ka üks käsi püsti, üks moment, mikrofon tuleb teie juurde ja
Tere, küsin, kas kuritöö on ka töö?
Maybe I should come down. It's easier.
mis te selle küsimusega mõtlete?
Somebody is criminal, is it also a job? Can you specify? Kas saaksite täpsustada?
Kurjategijad ka, ta tahab kuuluda kuhugi, keegi austab teda, tema selles, ütleme, kas või need kuritegijad ühendas.
Criminals also want to belong somewhere,
Yeah.
do the job,
Yeah.
have identity.
Yeah, yes. Very, very important question. A very important comment. Sometimes when I talk about these 7, I emphasize that being able to manage something, to be good at something, is actually not even related to whether it's lawful or not. We're talking of mental health. We're not talking about whether things are legal or not. However, if you're in a prison or if you are have a criminal background where you have ended up in unbearable debt and you've been restricted of internet, of seeing your children and everything, then this becomes, of course, very, very difficult. And becoming a prisoner, becoming a criminal is a part of your identity. So it's kind of, it's like work. And for many professional criminals, it's a part of their identity, just like your work is a part of your identity. But you might have another comment. You might respond.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Kas on veel mõni? Ja seal on ka üks käsi püsti. Mikrofon veel sinna ka.
Hello.
I would like to say that this was probably the best mental health-related presentation or talk ever that I have heard of my life.
Oh,
So I would say thank you for
thank you very much.
this. Very
You know your Minister of Labor and your Minister of Health will soon give this talk. Maybe at an international conference, you know.
Yes, I know.
Thank you.
It was quite interesting approach.
Thank you.
Aitäh, thank you for that comment too. Ma arvan, et me võime vist praegu nii-öelda selle ametliku osa lõpetada, kui keegi ülimalt aktiivselt märku rohkem ei anna ühekski küsimuseks ja tähelepanekuks, aga siin veel üks on, nii et ja proovime veel siit, vaatame, mis siit tuleb ja palun.
Eesti keeles küsida. No me saame ülevaate, mis toimub Eestis, kuidas meil on seda, kuidas teie riigis on kaitstud töökohal inimese vaimne tervis ja kuidas seal ennetatakse häired, me saaks võib-olla võrrelda võib-olla oma tööandjate käest hakata küsima seda kaitset.
Mental health in workplaces is organized in Norway. Maybe you have some very good examples and we can put pressure on our employers and demand something.
I don't think we're the best, far from. However, I think what is actually possible to learn from was what I didn't spend much time on now. It's the individual placement report or support, that is assisted employment, which where we are able to get a lot of people that have fallen out of work because of mental disorders into work. And so far we have done cost effectiveness analysis of that. And it's a little bit, they have to get a very high income in order to pay to balance all the costs. But if they will be staying in work for like 5 years or something like that, then they will easily earn in the cost, the income from that. So this is probably something that would be very, very cost effective and very, very good for the mental health of those people which is consistent with the general literature. We're doing this with, and I don't think you see that so many other places, we do it with depression and anxiety disorders. There is very good evidence about psychosis and bipolar disorders and severe mental disorders, but now doing this with common mental disorders is actually good for the country, it's good for the person, it's good for everything. The other thing that I would strongly emphasize, what I spent some time on here, was using graded sick leave. Graded sick leave is the best, simply because when you suffer from a mental health condition, you will usually have some working capacity, maybe not exactly the same that you did, but keeping in touch with the workplace is so important. The longer time you fall out of 100% out of work on sick leave, the more difficult it is to come back. Not because of the illness, but because of shame, having to explain why you come away. So it's building up a buffer between you and the workplace. Did you understand what I said? Yeah. Okay. But I don't have we have a couple of good, very good places. We have, I would have liked to show you my underwear. The reason is that is made by a company called Stormbull. This company, every fourth person that is hired by this company had a mental health issue. And they are doing wonderfully. They simply show that whether you have a mental health condition or not is not the question of work or not. So they recruit actively. They're very conscious, recruit actively people. Every fourth should have a mental health condition. Not bad. Stormbull, they recently got the Openness Prize in Norway, delivered by the Council of Mental Health. You can write to me, I can tell you about it.
Yes, thank you very much. And today is the day of elections, so it's perhaps a little bit risky to speak too much about politicians. However, I've heard that Mr. Ostinovsky has a kind of a good education, which also has there is also a part of philosophy there. And yesterday, I was thinking you also had kind of a Platonic conversation, at least you saw a Platonic conversation between two parts of the one soul.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Yeah.
thank you for that. And
Yeah.
usually, you know, these Platonic dialogues, they end up with a mess or with a no result.
No.
Yesterday, it seemed that you had kind of a more positive result there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
thank you very much for that, and thank you for your wonderful lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aitäh!